So in this video, I'm going to show you the easiest way to manage Azure resources using Terraform and combining that with Azure DevOps. And the reason I say easy, so a lot of companies and organizations, they use Terraform to manage resources in Azure, such as like EC2 instances, not EC2 Azure instances, like virtual machines, storage accounts, key vaults, and things like that. And where a lot of people have trouble with is figuring out how do I structure my folders? How can I set up pipelines to be able to you know deploy multiple different resources within the same release or pipelines? And I'm going to show that here with setting up something. So it might take a little bit of time, but I think if you follow along in this, it'll definitely help give you an idea on how you can set this up for yourself. So I already have Azure DevOps set up. So if you want to set this up, you can set it up for free by going to dev.azure.com. It'll have you create your organization, and then Terraform is that's just my project name. So you can create a new project here, and then you're going to also need to set up your Azure DevOps to be able to talk to your Azure subscription. So you're going to need to go to settings, and then should say, oh, we're going to go inside the project first. Then we're going to go to project settings, service connections. And then mine says Azure DevOps, but you can name it whatever you want. But you want to create a new service connection. And then choose Azure Resource Manager. And then hit next. And then you can do a service principal automatic or service principal manual, and just walk through the steps. So if you got a specific subscription you want to use, select that, get the subscription ID, the name, the service principal ID, which you can create. You can also follow this link on how to create an Azure service principal. And then also, if you're already using Terraform, you might already have a service principal set up. And then once you get all this set up and then save it, then you'll be able to add this to your releases. So now we're going to go back to my repo here. So I have all my my repository already set up. If you don't, you can either hit clone here, and you can clone it in VS Code, or you can copy this and then clone the repository to whatever IDE that you're using. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code here. And typically you're going to have a folder, and as you can see, mine says Terraform here. I like to kind of group my, resources by subscription. So it can kind of depend. You could have multiple subscriptions, multiple environments, regions, things like that. But what I would do is I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this folder Pay As You Go. And inside of there, I'm going to have a folder called TF Resources. Now, I just call it TF Resources because it's Terraform Resources. Now, you might have other particular type of projects within this folder. So, like, let's say within the subscription, you have an HR team who comes to you and they need a specific resource, environment or something created, or you might want to actually build out the network for this particular subscription. So you might have a new folder called, Pay As You Go VNet, or you can do a dash VNet. And inside of there, you could have like all the resources through Terraform that would build out your virtual network. But inside this TF resources folder, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create multiple folders that allows you to basically separate out each resource. And I'm going to show you the reason why here shortly. So 1 second here, let me. All right, so in this folder, I'm going to create, like I said, multiple folders for different resources. So I can have resource groups here. Then I'm gonna have another folder called, let's say storage accounts. It looks like it didn't create it. New folder, storage accounts. Then let's just do one more. We might not have to put anything there, but let's just do something else that's easy. You could say subnets. So now we have three folders that all coincide with different types of resources within Azure. Basically going to take this and create a new file in there called main.tf. New file called variables.tf. And then we're going to copy these and put them all in the other one. Copy, paste, then paste. So we got three folders, all have the same type of files. Now we could have, TFRs, all that other stuff, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Basically just going to get this kind of started to kind of show you how the pipeline and everything like else will be set up. So for the resource groups, I'm just going to go to Terraform. Let's pull up Terraform's website. And we're just going to run through this real quick here. So let's actually go back to the registry. Providers, Azure. And let's look for resource groups. And basically we can copy this. So within Azure, you usually want to build multiple types of the same resource. And with that being said, you kind of want to make this more of a template versus a static file. So the name here, we would make it loop through a set of variables that we create. So the variable would be let's just call it resource groups. And then we're just going to do a default equals, and then resource groups equals, and then the name's going to be, and then we're going to make this our resource group name. So I'm going to do RG1 equals, and then you're going to have name equals RG1. And then the location is going to equal Central US. So now within resource groups, we have multiple resource groups that will get created. So we'll basically take this and copy it down into multiple, just like that. And these keys have to be unique. They don't have to match the same name, but I usually like to kind of keep them the same. So like this could literally be RG1 or 1, and this could be, name could be resource group 1. So don't try to correlate the name to what the key value pair is. And again, resource groups here will be different names. And then the locations can be the same. So according to Terraform, the only thing that's required is the location and the name. So we have that set up. So inside our main.tf, we're going to have our name be, so we're going to need to set this to a for each. So for each var.resource groups, the name is going to be each.value.name, and then each.value.location. So basically now, anytime we add a new resource group in here, it's going to create it within here without us having to copy the same resource block multiple times. And so we can use the same resource block and set up the actual stuff there. We do need our provider block, so we can go back and actually, if you're not familiar or you're just new to Terraform, if you go to providers and you go to Azure, there's a documentation page. You can see the provider here block that would be utilized. So you can take that, you can paste that in there. And again, these don't all have to be in separate files, but I like to keep them separated. The version, you can pin it to a higher version. So you can see the latest is 3.63. So we can change this to 6.3 if we want. And we can essentially copy this and paste it in all the other ones as well. So the resource group one, it'll be the same thing, and the same thing for the subnets. So we're going to save all those. And let's see, providers and the variables are saved. Okay. So now that we have those saved, let's get these, let's get them pushed up to, now we didn't put anything in these two yet, but that's fine. But the first thing I want to do is let's set up our pipelines to actually be able to get the right, to initiate the creation of those resource groups once we get it set up. And that's where the best part of this video comes in at, because when you're dealing with multiple resources, you want those to be able to be deployed whenever you're creating something new without having to go to the portal and setting that up manually. And being able and setting it up this particular way within this one folder, we can have it deploy when it detects certain resources being uploaded to the Azure DevOps repository. So I'm actually going to update this particular repository I have. Well, actually, you know what? I'll wonder if I can clone this. So should be able to clone. Okay, so I'll clone this one, and I'll basically kind of walk through what I did as well on this. So if I come through, so so basically in this clone version, I'm just going to call it Terraform Azure Resources. So if you're creating this pipeline from scratch, basically you're going to want to create, let's actually go back. So I'm going to save this. I just want to show for the people who haven't built a pipeline, you want to do a new pipeline. Choose the classic editor. If you're not familiar with YAML, you might just be a little confused on how to set that up. Choose your project, your repository, and for the default branch, we won't worry about that yet. But actually, I'm going to need to push my folders up so I can actually see the folders that I want to initiate this off of. So all these ones that are untracked, I'm basically just going to stage all of these. I'm going to do a git commit. So that might fire off one of my pipelines, but so now, so you'll hit continue, then basically just do an empty pipeline, and that'll put you right kind of where I'm at there. So I'm going to go back to the pipeline. That I was working on. So actually, let's cancel this. And the reason that fired off is because it's actually looking at the master branch. So let's go back into there. I'm going to edit this. And so you should see where it says, you should just have this. Then your agent job, you can set it to use a specific agent pool. You can just do the Azure Pipelines hosted one. That's just the ones that's managed by Microsoft. If you already have your own self-hosted agent, you can use that. If you need help setting one of those up, you can check out one of my latest videos on how that's done there. So I'm going to use my Terraform agents pool. And that's just a Windows VM that will host the files that gets dropped down. And let me make sure that's okay, set there. And so basically what I'm doing is the source folder, I'm saying is going to be, let's see if I can find it here. TF resources. Doesn't look like it's showing. Let me make sure that it actually. Doesn't look like it show. Let me make sure it went to the right. dev.azure.com, get Terraform, do a git status. Terminal. I'm on the master branch. Okay. So let's see if we make sure that I don't need to do like a pull request or anything. I should be. Oh, okay. I was in the wrong folder. Okay, so it's in this page you go. I was looking for the TF resources there. So it looks like, so as my page you go subscription, this TF resources where we want to kind of have our pipeline set to. So go back in here, hit edit, and then I'm going to change this back to my Terraform agents pool. Change the source folder to pay as you go, TF resources. And then so basically what this is going to do is it's going to look for anything in that particular folder that's changing. So that's going to be the source folder that it pulls from. And then for the triggers, the branch is going to be master. You can have a specific branch if you want, but I'm basically going for the master branch that gets triggered to build these resources. So I'm then going to hit save and actually I'm just going to hit save here. And then I'm going to set up my releases. So the releases is what's going to actually fire off these particular resources to get built in Azure. So I'm going to hit create a release. Oop, no, not create. We're going to hit a new release pipeline. And we're going to do an empty job. And so the project is going to be Terraform. The source build pipeline is going to be Azure, the Terraform Azure Resources pipeline. So that's a pipeline we want this to run these jobs and stages off of. Now there's no artifacts there now. And then basically we're just going to add multiple stages here. So we're going to have a stage for, let's do an empty job. So I'm going to name this resource groups plan. And then within the agent job, we're going to just choose our pipelines again. And this is where we'll just need to add the commands that we need to set up to do the plan and apply. So basically we're going to do Terraform installer. Then we're going to need the Terraform CLI. So we're going to, there's a validate. It says validate, but we can change these. Basically, I'm just going to do the init and then the plan and then the plan. And then for the plan for the init, we need to make sure that we set, for the plan for our providers, you need to set that service connection that you set up to be able to have it check against your existing subscription. Make sure nothing needs to be updated or modified. And then we're going to go to the next stage, and we're going to call this resource groups apply. And then same thing here. So our agent is going to be Terraform agents, which is my self-hosted pool. And the same thing here. We don't need the installer, since it'll already be installed. Basically, that would kind of be like if you, just want to have it always checked for consistencies. But I'll keep it on there. So this will be in the init, the plan, and then the apply again. Now you might have it a little different, but I just kind of like to run the initialization again, which isn't a problem. And then the plan again, just in case anything may have changed, even though we will have an apply that will basically run like an auto approve, section there. So the providers for this is also going to need to be your Azure provider service connection. Now I'm using local state, so I'm not using like a storage account or anything. So you will see that option in here if you want to, where is it at here on the initialization? See where it's at. Usually gives you, should be an area where you can set your particular, oh, the backend. There you go. Sorry. So Azure RM. If you choose that, it'll actually allow you to set your resource group, storage account, stuff like that. But I'm just using local for now. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now, as you can see, this is going to be Azure Resources Pipeline or release. So if we look here, we got resource groups, plan, resource group, apply. Now you can kind of see what we're doing here. So we'll have another stage or that we'll have for our storage accounts, and then another one for our subnets. So you can essentially have these running against each other for different resources without having to run separate Terraforms, in a terminal or within, unless you're using like Terraform Cloud or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my pipeline. Let's save this. I should have already done it. Then now let's run this pipeline. Well, actually, I need to go in and actually start my server. So I typically shut this down to kind of save on cost. Start this up. So while that takes a quick second to start up, let's go ahead and go in just so we can set up one more to kind of show you how this would work, making changes to multiples. If we look for the Azure RM storage account, we're just going to take this example and go back into our storage accounts, paste this in here. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need a data block. And I say data block because we're going to need to access the resource group that this storage account will get deployed in. And that's because we're actually creating the storage account, the resource groups ahead of time, unless you're creating them within here, but then it kind of defeats the purpose of keeping them, things separate. So you wouldn't want to have to create resource groups within the same setup in case you need to make changes later on down the road. So if we go into resource groups and we look for the data block, basically we need to create and then the name, we'll just call it name. And this is going to be for each var dot storage accounts, which we haven't created yet. So this variable is going to be called storage accounts. Basically the same way, default equals storage accounts, storage one. We need name. And what do we need for the storage account? So if we go back, so we need name, resource group, count tier. I think there's so name, resource group, location, account tier, account replication type. Okay, so we'll just take all these here. And we'll make these into and for the resource group name, we're going to call this, just 1 second here. Line that up. You can actually do that with like a Terraform format. So the resource group name is going to be RG1. And we don't actually need the location. We could actually use the data block, the data blocks storage accounts output for the location. So it'll be data.azure.rm resource group.main.location. But we can kind of keep it within here as well. As long as you name it the same or give it the same location that the resource group is currently in, it will work. Central US. Just going to call this RG1. And let's just call it storage 1. Actually, storage accounts have to be globally unique, so that might not work. So we'll just do storage 1. Let's say July 2023. Kevin. All right. So we'll save that, and we got a equals here. So save that. That hasn't changed. This did change. So now the same thing applies here. So for each var.storage accounts, name equals each dot value dot I'm looking at the wrong ones. There. And then now to grab the resource group name, here we're going to go with, so this is going to be a for each as well. Each var.storage accounts name equals each.value.name. The resource group is going to be data.azure.rm, and then each.key, because we want to grab each particular resource group's name as it's coming across. We don't want to just grab one particular one. So each.key .name, and then the location. And then the account tier. And then the replication type. So as you can see now, we'll take the tags out. We're not going to worry about that. We made it to where now this isn't just a static file. Only thing we'll ever have to do is if you're building resources is coming into the variables and adding another block to create another storage account. So that's it. You just take this, copy it, add another block down, and you never have to touch this again. Unless you're adding in like tags or something. But you don't want to really change too much in here to affect other resource groups that could be, potentially destroy or, delete something. So now that we got those set, we want to go ahead and stage those. Git commit -m update storage accounts. It's probably going to try to run my pipeline, so let's get, oh, let me see. See. I gotta get back into that folder. 1 second here. All right, so git commit new storage accounts. Oh, got those pushed up. And let me stop that. It's probably going to try to run my pipeline. Yeah, you know what? That's fine. Let's let it run here. So we should see this actually finish. So it dropped all the files. Now, if we go to releases, we should see, oh, you know what? Actually, I do have to make one particular change here. So let me edit this. Inside of here, we only want the, so for the jobs, the configuration directory, we only wanted to check for the, we only wanted to look inside the resource groups folder. So we're going to copy that because we don't need this to run for everything. Same thing here. Same thing there. And the same thing there. So that's it there. Now what we'll do is save that. Now we didn't have the continuous integration already turned on for the pipeline, so for it to continue to go. So let's go ahead and just create a release here. So we can already have an artifact ready to go, and we're going to run that. So if we go back to the release, into the logs, it's going to initialize. And then it's going to have the plan that gets created. And if we look at the plan now, it's going to already go to the next stage because we didn't have like anything in place to pre-check anything. Oh, had an error here. What is it saying? Object does not have an attribute name. Oh, let's see what we had wrong here. So each.value.name. Go back into my variables. Resource groups. So main.tf and resource example. Oh, okay. Let's see. I think I might have. This object does not have an attribute name. So yeah, we probably got some. Each var.resource groups. Let's just make sure that's correct. That's fine. Might just have something not saved somewhere. Name. Location. Not seeing what's going on here. Let me take a look. Okay, so working through that, I actually found, so what the problem was is I had actually not noticed that I had resource groups twice. So I had it like this, and it should be like this. Don't save that. Yeah, let me pull that back up. So it should just be, yeah, my default and then the resource groups that I have. So actually I need to go in and fix that on the storage accounts one as well. All right, so now if we go back into my release, we should see that this has been applied. And this is saying no changes applied. So let's see why here. So we go back and edit this. Might have not, we didn't change the directory there. But let me fix this. Oh, actually, we never ran this again. So let's run this again here. Create a release. So the other release was a different pipeline here. So this one should show that there's 3 resource groups to be created. The plan should show 3 to be added. And then on our, and this is where it'll get created. So now that that's actually going there, let's go back into the storage account. And what we're going to need to do also for here is on our pipeline, it's going to actually use the same pipeline. And let me make sure triggers is correct. And then also, you know, it has branch filters here. You can also add path filters. So if you only want it to run when a specific branch is called or a specific path is updated, you can add the path to that particular folder as well. So I think it would be, let's leave and go out of here. So it would be page you go TF resources. So you would have to actually type it in as like pay as you go / TF resources. I think I might actually have that on one of my other pipelines. Let me see what the trigger is set up for on that one. No, I don't. But basically, yeah, you can actually go to your, let's go back. Kind of how this is set like this. You can go to triggers and hit a path filter and go like that. And I think you would go asterisk. So it looks for any changes within that path filter. So that way it doesn't just only run when this branch is ran, but it also this filter file doesn't, you know, just keep it always running every time someone updates the master branch. So then we'll come back in and we'll edit this particular pipeline, and we can actually clone one of these. save it as a template. Just call it Azure Resource Template. Hit OK. And then let's exit off that. And then we'll add a new stage. And we'll select this Azure Resource Template. And we'll call this storage account plan. And then it's off of this. And we'll just use the same one and call it storage account apply. Now we will need to make some edits to this. So we'll need to change this to storage accounts. And let's just copy this. Now you can turn these into variables to make it a lot easier, so you don't have to actually keep copying and changing these over time, but I can get into that in another video as well. Storage accounts, plan, and then we need to add one more Terraform CLI for our apply. Provider, Azure DevOps. Okay. So we'll save this. And I believe we already checked this. Oh, no, we didn't. So let's go ahead and stage that. And again, let's just go ahead and cancel this one. So now this pipeline is going to kick off here. Oh, it's actually using the Ubuntu, which it shouldn't do. Let me actually switch this back. Let's see, Terraform agents. Yep. Save and queue. Go to releases. So this is 171. So let's let this finish, and then now what I'm going to do is once this finishes off here, so build 171. So if we go to our releases, we're going to create a release, and we want to build 171. You can see that there's others, but we want the latest one here. So then we're going to hit create. So as you can see, now we got our resource group and then our storage account. Click on this here. So the storage account one fired off first, so you can see that the other one's going to have to wait. But we already got the storage accounts created, so hopefully this should pick up on the storage account that we want created and then the resource group that is going to get deployed in. So we can see that the plan has one storage account to be created in our RG1 resource group here. And then we should see that. Well, actually, it's firing off this one here. And that's where the multiple agents come into play. So you can have multiple jobs running at the same time. Now you can see that the storage account is going to get created. And if we open up the portal, we should all automatically start to see that these are showing up. So I got RG1, RG2, RG3, and then see the plan again has the one to be created inside of our existing resource group. Let's go in here and we should see that. It's probably going to take a little bit of a second here. Now, if this failed for any reason, it would probably be because this name is unique. Like I said, this has to be unique within Azure itself. But now you can kind of get an idea on what we're kind of doing here. So we created a folder that allows us to kind of, you can mirror this off whatever you want, but I kind of like it to go by the subscription and then by, whatever project you're working on. But then the TF resources can kind of be your folder where you do all your one-off type stuff. So anything in regards to one resource group, like, hey, I need a resource group. Can you create this? Hey, can I get a storage account? Can I get a subnet? Things like that that can be repeated in a repeatable fashion and made useful for your teammates to kind of work on without having to do it directly within the portal. And another great thing about it is you can make it to where everything is kind of built the same way. You can kind of make this to where everything's lowercase for the name. The location could be a specific location. You can do conditionals in your variables, all types of things. And some of these things can be done with like the Azure blueprints and stuff like that. But a lot of people using Terraform, it kind of makes things a lot easier. So it looks like it's still creating, or it might have finished. So it did finish there. Now, if we go ahead and refresh this, we should see our new storage account. And that's it there. So, with that being said, if you have any questions in this particular setup or ways to make it better, feel free to drop me a comment down below. I only basically touched the, tip of the iceberg on how this can be set up to make your life a lot easier working within your team or company. If you have any suggestions or recommendations on how I did things or, ways to make it better, I'm all ears. Again, thanks for tuning in and hope to see you next time.